I mean, we're spending money on weapons. Reagan said something. He said, well, you could say the government is spending money like drunken sailors, but that would be unfair to drunken sailors. Why are you picking out the cinder in your neighbor's eye when you got a log in your own eye? When what republicanism is about is freedom. It's not about money. Welcome back to the Professor Penn podcast. January 14th, Tuesday night, 7:30 p.m. Central Time. This is episode number 173, L.A. burning. Yes, it's L.A. burning. We're going to be talking about Los Angeles burning throughout much of the show tonight, and I want to welcome you all back. Hope you're all doing well. I'm getting a lot of insights into things that it just comes with, getting long in the tooth and grizzled and gray and thinking about things for a lifetime. And, things start to get very clear. Some things become more challenging too. I mean, there's an old religious uh, imperative to walk by faith and not by sight. And it's easier said than done. I confront uh, my own human arrogance and my own life path, and I look at it and I go, wow, hmm, lean not to my own understanding. And, when you reach that point, it generally comes when you're unable to make things happen by yourself, which really is a good transition into this LA burning. This is a very personal thing for me. First of all, my son Jacob, who I'm very close to him, and if he happens to watch this, hi Jake. He's a very talented musician, and he has a very interesting history, and we've always been close. And I just see him as I'm talking about. I see him being, 3, 4 years old. He's just always been tight with me, and we hung out a lot. Of course, he's my son, so he's launched out of the tube and he's doing his own thing. And he's in Los Angeles, and he has a family there, children that he's responsible for, and he actually had to evacuate his home because of the Palisades fire. And Jake is a survivor. I mean, I know Jake is quite a cagey and capable young man, so I'm not worried about him per se, as far as his survival. Um, but I do worry about him being in California, which is something we're going to talk about tonight throughout the podcast. And then maybe there's no such thing as a best friend. For me, I've got a group of people I would characterize as being best friends. Any of them are my best friend. And I have a friend there that I've known since 1999. We are so tight and we're so close. And I'll give you a blast. This dude is a liberal Democrat, and we love each other so much. We've had this very passionate and erudite conversation for 25 years about politics, never raised voice to each other, never judged against each other, exchanged information with each other. I care about him, family like family, and he lives in Brentwood, and that fire is right down the block from his home in Brentwood. And if you know anything about Brentwood, this guy is, he's a very successful um, human being. I actually met him in the tire business, and I will say in business, I'm blessed to have quite a few people in my business career that I actually would be friends with them even if there was no money involved. And he's a perfect example of that because at one time we were hugely intertwined into, economically, and we barely are now. And we still talk almost every day. I look forward to his phone calls. He calls me every Saturday when he's driving into work. He works 6 days a week. I know his father. I know his wife. I know his son. His son and I are good friends. I mean, we're tight. And, it's painful to see him struggle with this fire. And I'm going to send him this podcast because this podcast he does watch from time to time. He always tells me don't record more than 15 minutes. He's in Hollywood after all. This guy understands the entertainment business in addition to being in the tire business. But uh, this issue about L.A. burning, this is going to be yet again another one of those issues that we're going to search for truth. And as we search for it, we're going to be confronted with all kinds of conflicting narratives that's going to grind this thing into dust. And the net result of it is going to be climate change. Because if you're in third grade and your teacher puts on the screen a major American city burning to the ground and tells her students that this is evidence of climate change, um, what are you going to do when you're in third grade? You got no filter. You have no way of sorting through the evidence. Third grade, heck, you could be 30. You could be Tanner's age. Good morning, Tanner.
Morning, David.
How's this thing playing on TikTok and all the different, well, I don't know if you're on TikTok, but all the different social media places where you're looking? Is this evidence of man-made climate change? Is that how this is playing for your generation?
Well, it's hard because TikTok has the aggressive algorithm, right? So I'm seeing just a bunch of stuff that it doesn't even talk about that at all, actually. It's a lot of the stuff I'm seeing is questioning if it was all intentional.
Wow.
Yeah. I have this one video I found where it's a satellite view and you can see the fires combust in 3 different sections or sectors completely
I saw that
different.
same video, and the first thing that ran to my mind is, I wonder if that's real
Yeah,
or if that's created, because we don't know.
I've never been there, so
We
I don't know if that's the landscape
we're
I'm looking
in
at.
we're in this moment where the nature, the grounds, the limits of knowledge are being so assaulted by technology.
Yeah.
But let's just play a video by a pretty well-known band called Bad Religion that's, I think, over 10 years old. And we're just going to play this video, and I'm just going to start to comment on these fires as we go through the podcast. I guess uh, fires in Los Angeles are not a novel idea. This video is over 10 years old. By the way, on a sidebar, every time I play music now, you know what runs through my head? I
Mhm.
wonder if Tucker's okay with this music. We got a fan, Tucker. Tucker, he's a participant in the community. Tucker is a music lover, and I'm always interested in what he thinks about the music that I play. And he's not shy sometimes to say, "Hey, Professor Penn, that sucked." So, Tucker, I hope that one was okay. But the point is, this is a known threat. And actually, by the way, while I'm playing around here with the audience and trying to make all this work and make it make sense because it's so overwhelming, can you pull up and find from yesterday's radio show that Klaus Schwab clip about Los Angeles?
Mhm.
You know, I you'd think that, Tanner and I are coordinating. We're not. I really didn't know what he was gonna say when I asked him, "What has he seen on social media?" And the idea that, this is a plan, that this idea that there's a plan is really growing throughout our culture. It's growing so much that I watched Gavin Newsom appeal to President Biden to censor Tucker Carlson, censor Alex Jones, and censor Steve Bannon, who are also asking the question. Well, in the case of Alex Jones, he's not asking the question. He's making a statement that this is the plan. And there is evidence, uh, which I'm asking Tanner to get this clip of Klaus Schwab. There is evidence that there is a plan. And I'm going to tell you from being in the tire business as a business person, there's definitely been a plan to destroy uh, big parts of our supply chain, to destroy the people that are involved, to destroy the distribution, to eliminate the competition which comes in a free market. Because, a free market, hey, a free market it's free. It's free. It allows for self-governance, and self-governance is intended to deliver the maximum benefit available, kind of in an esoteric way, to all the participants. Did you find that, Klaus Schwab? Look at this. Look at this. We played this on the radio show yesterday. Please go ahead.
Was the 20th Governance Summit. You will use the app like Uber, but not anymore to call some driver, but a automatically guided car, a self-driven car, will come to your hotel or wherever you are and will bring you to the airport. No, Los Angeles is one of the cities with the heaviest traffic, who told me in 2030 Los Angeles will be private car driven free. And this will allow to transform highways into parks and other public spheres.
Well, for those of you who have been to Los Angeles, you know that the uh, city is in a semi-arid desert climate, uh, and the automobile there makes Los Angeles possible. And here's Klaus Schwab, kind of a cartoonish arch villain. Um, Makes me think of Dr. Evil on Austin Powers. Um, but you're laughing at
Yeah,
me.
because he says Uber, like overly fancy. Chill, dude.
The guy has got style. When we have a supervillain, part of being a supervillain is being stylish about it. He's quite stylish. And he's saying, hey, the cars are going to be gone in 5 years. There's going to be no more private car ownership in 5 years, and the highways are going to turn into public spaces. How are you going to do that? You'd have to burn the city down and rebuild it in a new kind of format, in a new kind of architectural format to create such a reality. And the scope of the destruction, and I think the Palisades fire, when I looked yesterday, was only about 15% contained. Why don't you Google that up for tonight? Just go Palisade fire containment percentage. Let's see where it's at. We're recording this in the morning of the 14th. We're going to post up tonight, so things may change during the day. probably for the worst because the Santa Ana winds have picked up again in Los Angeles. So the idea, and I don't have any 17% contained. There's a great visual. Thank you very much, Tanner. We're getting quite interactive here in the studio. Very cool. I noticed that when I'm on Real America's Voice, where appeared this past Saturday, when I'm talking, they just put stuff up. I don't even have to ask them. That's how on top of it they are at RAV. So this is the Palisades fire. This is the one that forced my son to evacuate and is threatening my best friend's home in Brentwood. And it's only 17% contained. Look at the scope of that destruction, and it's only 17% contained. One could envision this thing burning the entire LA basin out because this is a semi arid area and there's a shortage of water. And this is really a important part of understanding this fire. I wanted to play clips from a movie called Chinatown, which I recommend all of you go take a look at. I can't play them because they are copyright protected, and the entire episode wouldn't get up if I gave it a whirl. This was a movie made in the 70s by a very famous director named Roman Polanski, who fell from grace with the sea. He was I think he was convicted, or I'm pretty sure he was convicted of having sex with an underage. I think it was a girl. I can't remember the circumstances. He fled the country for decades, went to Europe. He was very talented. And this movie, Chinatown, was really about the rape of a daughter by a father when she was 15, which was about the age of this girl that Roman Polanski slept with, which is rape. And so it was quite a self-revelatory piece of art. It was very well done. It's a film noir. It stars Jack Nicholson and the very great John Huston, which most of you never heard that name. He was a fantastic director, and he also was an actor. Burt Young was in it. He was in Rocky later on. I mean, it was a great Faye Dunaway. Oh my God. I saw Faye Dunaway when I watched this movie this past weekend, and I looked at Mrs. Professor Penn, and I realized she reminds me of Faye Dunaway. And I mean, that's saying a lot. Of course, that's how it is for me. And Faye Dunaway was stunning in this movie, just stunning. Go watch this movie. But the subplot of this movie was about this man, uh, Noah Cross, who raped his daughter, but he also controlled the water rights in Los Angeles. The water was privately controlled, and you have three, and still to this day, there's the private control of water in Los Angeles. They're fingering it's going to be like the Bernie Madoff of this fire. You know, Bernie Madoff was the only villain who was convicted in the Wall Street collapse of 2008. Of course, he was a poster child of fraud and malfeasance, and he looked in Der Stürmer in the 30s when they were making very anti-Semitic portraits of Jews and putting them in the newspaper. Bernie Madoff looked just like that. Well, now they got a Jewish couple named the Resnicks that own a company called the Wonderful Company, and you buy their products. They own Fiji Water. They grow most of the almonds in the country. Um, they have one of the largest agribusinesses in the country. They're billionaire farmers, and they control a vast amount of the water in California. California has three competing groups fighting over the water. 40% of the water in the state is used in agribusiness. And for those of you that don't know, there's a place called the Central Valley where I've done a lot of business for a lot of years. One of my best friends is up there too, I do business with. And then there's the San Joaquin Valley. These agriculture areas grow a tremendous percentage of the crops that you and I consume every day. What isn't grown in California is imported from Mexico, which is another interesting story because we're coming up on President Trump next week, and you have to wonder what he's going to do with Mexico. But in terms of the agribusiness in California, it's tremendously powerful politically, and one would think that it would be, Republican, farmers. Now, farmers are often, you know, Democrat. Like here in Minnesota, they call it the DFL. It's not the Democrat Party, it's the Democrat Farmer Labor Party. Farmers are aligned with government. They're self-governing, they run the government. Gavin Newsom, the governor, has received major, major support and contribution from the said Resnick clan that controls all this water. They own 57% of one of the largest reservoir basins in California. So you've got the agriculture interest fighting for its water. You've got the city. I mean, the city needs water. Look what happened. The fire hydrants were dry. There was no water in the fire hydrants, which is had a big reason why, this fire spread the way it did. And then you have the environmentalists, the radical environmentalists, which obviously in California, because it's such a leftist state, the environmental movement is so strong there, and there's been this great effort to undam the rivers, which of course they dam them to control the water. Over half the dams in California have been removed. They want to have a natural habitat for the fish. All they want to maintain the natural environment. I mean, all that stuff is great, but you have these three competing groups: the city, the environmentalists, and the farmers, and they're fighting over a limited resource, water. And as bad religion created the art over 10 years ago, Los Angeles has been burning since Los Angeles was established. This is not a surprise. So my summary statement in this very long preamble is government does a lot of things in our country, and most of the things government does has nothing to do with the original formation of government. The original formation of government was to protect property. The original creation of the law was about property rights. Uh, Property, when might makes right, if I have a piece of property where I'm growing crops for my family and someone stronger than me comes in and just pushes me off and kills me and takes my land, that's why people banded together and formed communities to protect the property upon which they were growing the food which they needed to survive. Property rights. Property rights is the cornerstone of governance. Fire, protecting property from fire is the cornerstone of governance. So when you have a government, and I'm leaving aside the climate change argument because clearly the dry season in California is longer. But there was all these decisions made about how the forest would be tended, how the debris would be raked out, how the water would be apportioned, how there would be fire breaks cut through the forest. There were all these environmental issues that collided with the water use issues. It doesn't matter. It does not matter what the circumstances were when the core cornerstone of governance is protect my house from being burnt down. Man, I elected you to protect my property, and we forgot about that in California. Now, how can you forget about the fundamental idea of governance? I don't think you can. This is why this argument that's starting to percolate up, as Tanner just alluded to, that you saw on, was that on TikTok?
Yeah.
That this was a plan, a plandemic, so to speak.
Yeah. If it's not planned, something else that I've been kind of thinking of personally is it's quite convenient because we've stopped talking about a lot of things that were happening. So it's kind of don't let a what do they say? Don't let a tragedy go to waste.
Don't let a crisis go to waste.
Yeah. I feel that immensely with this because I haven't heard Luigi's name in a long time.
Whose name?
See, that's what I mean. The guy that killed that CEO.
Oh, that went off the
It
yes.
just nobody's talking about it anymore. Just off the deep end.
Well, I have to say, for this from an economic perspective, I mean, the damage right now is in the $2 to $250 billion range at least. If you were going to want to rebuild Los Angeles, this is the way to go about it. I mean, how are you going to get everybody? This is the this is the most expensive real estate. Oh, Maui. It's not. This isn't quite the most expensive real estate.
Yeah.
the stuff that burned in Maui was actually a little bit maybe it's on a par basis. We're talking about the most expensive real estate in the world. And, I say to my friend, and if my friend watches this out there, I've said to him many times, he's very wealthy, but he's not Jeff Bezos wealthy. And I've said to him many times, I said, "Brother, you're more like a cab driver than you are like Jeff Bezos." And he guffaws and says, "That's not true." Because there's people that have property out there in Los Angeles, and maybe it's been in the family for 30, 40, 50, 60, 80 years. Maybe there's a corner on a street corner that somebody bought in the 30s for $17,000 that's worth $17 million now. So we have people out in California that are so land rich that they're really self-governing. They're really free of the economic imperative of you're going to earn your daily bread with the sweat of your brow because they have this property. And that's very pesky for governance, particularly when your governance is about man-made climate change. Oh, this fits that narrative. Uh, Democracy, well, there's no problem out in California. Women still have their reproductive health care rights in California. But what about the social equity issue? How can you have the social equity where we're going to have, as Camilla Harris says, who emanates from California, that no matter where people start, they have to have the same outcomes? That's equity. Well, California, the disparity between rich and poor in California, you'd have to agree, is among the greatest in the world, right?
Yes, I mean, I've never been there. I always hear it's expensive to live in California.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
it's
it's
beautiful,
crazy.
beautiful property. So
Yes, it's a beautiful Calif I've been there many times, it's beautiful there. I had another friend of mine, someone I value very much in my life, and you're gonna laugh, and you're gonna say, "Well, I mean, uh, how can you hang around with people that don't believe in God?" Hey, I'm working on believing in God myself, so I'm not very judgmental about the level of people's faith. I said this earlier in the podcast, uh, walking by faith and not by sight is, not in vogue, it's not in fashion. And for me, it comes about when I become overwhelmed by events that I can no longer control. And then I ask myself, why am I trying to control anything? I had a godmother, wonderful woman of God named Georgina Moore, and she was the first one who said this to me in 1989. She said, "Let go and let God." And I'd never heard that before. And I'll tell that story someday. She was a huge help to me. I met her in Chicago, Illinois, and I was walking out of a building, and she walked up and started speaking to me in Latin. And I looked at her, and I said, "What did you just say to me?" And she said, "Who are you?" She said, "Covadis." She was speaking to me in Latin, and told her who I was, and she said, "I've been sent by the Most High God to exchange my life for yours until you are healed." And I looked at her like, "What?" And she was a 6'4" black woman who became kinda like my godmother. She was a deacon in Reverend Wright's church, the famous Reverend Wright who said, "And the chickens are coming home to roost." That was kind of a lodestone around Barack Obama's neck in, 2008 when Barack Obama was running for president. You don't remember this? You were probably 12 years old.
mhm.
How old were you in 2008?
It was 8.
8 years old,
I'm a
great.
2000s baby, so
Okay, there you
easy
go.
math.
Got it. So you don't even know who Reverend Wright is, and if you don't know, look it up. But, she said that to me, "Let go and let God," and I'm still unpacking what she meant by that. But going back to this governance idea, when government does not protect property, it has failed the people. So I have a new, uh, initiative in my life, which is, I have no political ambition. I don't even have any entertainment. I don't have any ambition I never thought I would do this, but I'm doing it because 'cause I'm called to do it in my own making up meaning in my own life, and, I'm looking at the political as being important because I think our politicians are no good. I'm looking at the politicians. They just let a entire city burn to the ground. And what I find is a lack of eloquence in my politicians. I find a lot of lying, a lot of lying. Like, for example, we're coming up on our 200th episode, and Tanner's come up with a really great theme for number 200. We're inviting Tom Emmer on the podcast, Representative Tom Emmer from CD6. Come on, Mr. Emmer. We know each other. Please come on. I hope all your constituents spread the word. This is an invitation on show 200 because I'm on you for not telling the truth. I don't understand what's impacting you, and I'd like to talk to you. I don't dislike any of these people personally. I don't like the way we do politics. I don't like lying. I don't like my cities burning to the ground. We're losing touch with what government is supposed to do unless, as Tanner intimated, this is on purpose. So I have, I talk about being political. I've been saying on the podcast for, what is this? This is for 172 episodes, I've been saying, I don't care if these people are evil or stupid, the result's the same. And I thought about that when I was going on RAV, because RAV has a very big audience. Probably 500,000 people watched me. And I'm thinking, I can't be saying stupid or evil. Evil has a religious overtone, which I don't want to use every day of the week. And stupid is probably no longer politically correct to call people stupid, right? So I changed it. It doesn't matter if these people are ill-intended or incompetent. If they're ill-intended or incompetent, it doesn't matter. The result is the same. My son had to evacuate his home, burnt. My best friend is on the edge of losing his home. I love these people. I am personally insulted and torn in my spirit because of this. I'm worried about my son and my best friend. I'm worried about them. This is unnecessary. When rock bands, Tucker, I hope you like Bad Religion. I'm sure you're going to put it in the live chat. When rock bands talk about fire in LA, when movies are made in the 70s about the problem of water in LA, this is not a surprise. It may be a surprise if you're watching me and you live in Florida or if you live in Minnesota. We're not thinking about this in Minnesota. We're thinking about, man, what's the temperature here right now?
Oh, right now,
In Minnesota,
-5.
let me give you a weather report from Minnesota. Right now, as we sit
-8.
it's -8 Fahrenheit. Now, let me tell you, Minnesotans that are watching me, because I do have a nice Minnesotan audience, and thank you for tuning in. Can you imagine what would happen if the power went off and there was no gas heat in -8 here today? Like all of a sudden, there was a plan to kill all the Minnesotans. I would tell you if the power and the gas were shut off here in Minnesota today and were shut off for 2 weeks, 1,000,000 people would die,
Yeah,
right?
I think so. I don't even think the natives stuck around these months. I think they would move
Go
down south
south.
a little more.
Yeah, I mean, it's cold, man. It's cold, and I'm driving to work in my car. I throw a winter jacket in my back seat. I'm not paying attention to it because we're living in this kinda not reasonable. It's just not reasonable how we're not self-governing. So these people in Los Angeles depended on the government to protect them from a known threat. There is someplace, there is a clip about firefighters. Find that one while we're going through. We're gonna play that one too. Uh, it's what the heck? It's probably clip number 1. No, it's not. Where'd that clip go? Anyhow, if Tanner can find it, great. You can find it. That we've given the fire departments around the country have given tens of millions of dollars of firefighting equipment to the Ukrainians. I had a Los Angeles news clip that I found where Los Angeles News was bragging about the Los Angeles Fire Department giving the equipment of the fire department to the Ukrainians. Did I lose that clip and didn't put it in the
No,
script?
I got it.
Play that for everybody. Thank you.
Welcome back. Tonight's positive story takes us out to Los Angeles, where fire crews are donating some much-needed supplies for first responders in Ukraine. The LA County Fire Department, the LA City Fire Department, and the Air National Guard have collaborated to send some of their surplus equipment to the war-torn country. It's part of a nationwide effort among agencies across the U.S. The donated supplies include hoses, nozzles, helmets, body armor, and more.
The Los Angeles County Fire Department is extremely proud to partner with our brother and sister firefighters and the country of Ukraine to assist them in assisting the lives and protecting the lives and property of their citizens.
A plane carrying the supplies is expected to fly to Ukraine sometime today.
Okay, so there's no water in the fire hydrants. The basin where the reservoir where they store water was empty. They didn't clear the brush. There was no fire breaks. They shipped their supplies overseas to a foreign government. It could just be incompetence in a series of, unrelated but interlocking events that led to a catastrophe. Los Angeles is what's called a complex system. Like an airplane, when an airplane crashes, it doesn't crash because of one event. There's a series of things that happen that bring an airplane from 40,000 feet to the ground and kill 300 people. It's not just one thing. There's a lot of things that happened here. But when you see Klaus Schwab talking about Los Angeles of having no private car ownership in 5 years, you have to ask yourself, how is that going to be accomplished?
Yeah.
How are they going to do that?
I look at 94 and I think like, man, it's always backed up, and it's because when this was first made, there wasn't this many people. And now we have so many people trying to go on that road, but how do you fix that? And that's just one road we're talking about.
That's
So
a
if you
great,
wanted
that's a
LA
great,
to, it's crazy to think, yeah, there's no way you can get that done in 5 years unless,
now I'm going
this
to,
event happens.
now I'm going to tell you, Tanner gets my scripts first thing in the morning. He doesn't know where we're headed. Well, we're going to talk about depopulation too. I mean, there is a theme going on in our world that in the search for truth, we have to look at it not as a fact, but as a possible reality. Talked a lot about secret societies. We've talked a lot about a lot of things over 172 episodes. And I've been trying to weave a tapestry of information. And I always urge you, and thank you for participating, to do your own research. Please don't take my word for it. I try to point you to the source materials, like The Origin of the Species, like Robert Spencer, like Sir Francis Galton, like the woman that started Planned Parenthood, whose name is escaping me right now, Margaret Sanger. We played a lot of Margaret Sanger here on the Professor Penn podcast. We have to take a look at and perhaps all these different things started atomized from each other, a bunch of different people. Maybe there wasn't some kind of coordinated plan. Maybe there's a spiritual plan that we don't understand. Just like I personally walk by, I'm increasing my uh, need to walk by faith and not by sight. I mean, it's come upon me, and I'm a meaning-making machine. So I'm saying, okay, maybe I'm being prepared for something. I don't know. Maybe there's a similar thing going on the dark side of the force, where there is some kind of plan going on, and that's really what this good versus evil thing is about. And I certainly am trying to have my feet firmly in the camp of, you know, good. And that's why I'm doing the podcast with you. But there's all these things going on, like this war in the Ukraine. Well, President Trump has confirmed that he's setting up a meeting with Putin to bring this war to an end. That's great. We'll be talking a lot about how President Biden is closing out his presidency, his 4-year term, by talking about all the great things he's done, as if things are getting better because of him. No, these people, look at the Democrat governance. This is the summary statement on the fire. I don't know if these people are ill-intended or incompetent. The result is one of the major cities in the world is burning to the ground. As a voter, to my friend Brad, as a voter, how can you support a political class of people that reduce your city to rubble? It's not a surprise. I mean, like if an earthquake hit, okay, there's really not control of an earthquake, allegedly. And there's people that think you can make an earthquake happen. But I mean, this is still, to me, can you make an earthquake happen? To me, that's still obviously if you detonate a nuclear weapon underground, you're gonna have a seismic event. So obviously it can happen. Has it been deployed to destroy things? Why are you smiling at me?
It was nothing. I was gonna make a stupid joke, but I was just cracking up myself.
I'm glad it was funny to you. Great. But my point is this fire thing is a known quantity. They didn't protect against a known threat. Why would you vote for people like this? And let's just take it to the next level. Please play number 1.
Yes.
In a recent interview of U.S. News and World Report, Secretary of the Treasury Blumenthal blamed our current rising inflation in a large part on our foreign trade and unions. He did, however, say that the government was little to blame. Would you like to comment on that?
Yes. Unfortunately, it is one of the defects of our political system that we always put a Secretary of the Treasury and other high government officials into a position in which, when they make public statements, they are almost driven. Well, what's the word I want to use? I want to use a polite word, equivocate. Secretary Blumenthal knows as well as you and I do that inflation does not come from trade unions. That doesn't mean that trade unions aren't grasping. Of course they are. But they don't produce inflation for one simple reason. They do not own a printing press on which you can turn out green pieces of paper. The only such printing press is in Washington. I say printing press, of course, in the modern age we do it in a more sophisticated way. We use bookkeepers and accountants and computers. But it comes down to the same thing. Inflation is made in Washington because only Washington can create money. And any other attribution to other groups of inflation is wrong. Consumers don't produce it. Producers don't produce it. The trade unions don't produce it. Foreign sheiks don't produce it. Oil imports don't produce it. What produces it is too much government spending and too much government creation of money and nothing else. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Tanner. Thank you. That's the great Milton Friedman. And when he did that in 1978, why don't you look up, while we're talking, what was the gross domestic product of the United States in 1978? Tanner will tell us in a second. The size of our economy has grown tremendously. This goes back to 1972 when President Nixon, under the stewardship of Henry Kissinger, a founder of the New World Order, financialized our economy by removing the link between the dollar and gold. What was the size of the economy in 78? Did you find that?
It looks like it is 2,351,600.
Billion.
No,
Trillion. That's
oh,
trillion.
my bad. Yeah, it's million, but I see that M right there. You're right. Trillion.
How
Yeah.
much is it?
So 2 trillion, 2.3 trillion.
2.3 trillion in 78. It's 10 times that size now. Our economy is 10 times what it was in 1978. We're about a $25 trillion economy. 25 trillion, all inflation. I mean, that's all inflation. It's not that there's more there's some build out of the economy. I get it. There's more people, more consumption, whatever. And we could adjust for that. But most of that growth, it's not real. It's the financialization of us, turning us into copper top batteries of consumption. We were formerly free, sovereign citizens of a republic. This is how you enslave people. And you ask yourself, is this a plan or is this by accident? How did we go? I mean, in 1978, you could go look up what was the national debt in 1978 because it wasn't much. It was under $1 trillion. I guarantee you it was under $1 trillion. And now our national debt is 36 trillion, which is why I've been riding Tom Emmer, allegedly a conservative, allegedly a Republican. And those are meaningless labels now because Tom Emmer has participated in creating trillions of dollars of additional debt, which enslaves us. How much was the debt in 1978? $771,544
Million.
million dollars,
Yeah.
under $1 trillion. So from 78, I was an adult, I was working. I cannot tell you how free. There's no way I can express to you the freedom that I felt in 1978 compared with the compression I feel in 2025. The difference is staggering. It's a staggering difference. Now, we created an administrative state in 1866 to overcome the vestiges of the slave system, to make sure that the impulse to form a more perfect union was followed through in the southern states. That's when the administrative state was formed. The bureaucracy was formed to carry out the pursuit of a more perfect union. Oh, well, that's a great idea until the people that are in that bureaucracy become corrupt, no longer Republican. And I don't mean by party, I mean by republicanism, the philosophy thereof. And then they, instead of granting people freedom, enslave everyone so that we have equitable outcomes. Kamala Harris stood in front of the country during her entire campaign and said repeatedly, it doesn't matter where we start, we all have to have the same outcome. That's communism. That's what Klaus Schwab is promoting in the World Economic Forum. You can go look it up online yourself. Their tagline, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. We've shown it many times on the podcast. I'll own nothing and I'll be happy. And I've said these people are really cruel. I mean, they're cruel in the extreme because they're Marxists. And we're going to talk about that too, what that means just in a second. But Friedman is talking about inflation being a government strategy. And here's, since I saw you last, the Biden administration announced a $500 million weapons package for the Ukraine. Kind of a kiss goodbye. Air-to-ground munitions, support equipment for F-16s, armored bridging systems. That sounds very offensive. Secure communications equipment, small arms and ammunition, spare parts. You know, this is great. The Biden administration has committed a total of $65.9 billion in military equipment to the Ukraine. You know, this number bounces around like a ping pong ball. I have no idea. I suppose I could go back through the Federal Register and figure it out because we're going to show some Federal Register extracts from this past week. White House just approved a massive weapons sale to Israel, $8 billion. This is since I saw you last. The sale includes air-to-air missiles, Hellfire missiles, 155 millimeter artillery rounds, small diameter bombs, JDAM kits, 500-pound bombs, you know, $8 billion. Hey, what's the big deal? Okay. So since I saw you, and Tanner can put these up, this is all stuff that came into the Federal Register this week. Here's 150 million for defense articles for the government of Italy. Here is 908 million for the government of the Netherlands. Here is 75 million for Taiwan. Here is 1.2 billion for the government of Poland, right there on the border with Russia. Let's get them ready. Let's keep getting that ready to go. Here's 69.3 million more for Italy. So that's just on Monday. And when we talk about inflation, it's about deficit spending, the size of government. So we continue to uh, uh, pursue this worldwide empire. which the citizens are being asked to pay for through inflation and taxation, which we have to recognize it's on our backs. We have a great society where we have all these programs so that no one's left behind, so to speak. And now just for fun, we're up to about 250 billion. If this fire keeps going, I'm sure it can get to 500 billion before they put the fire out. Where's that money going to come from? It's coming from you and me and Tanner, because we have to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. Oh, they're going to pull that out now. All of a sudden they're going to go Christian when it comes time to ask us for the money to rebuild LA. And what they're going to rebuild there is a smart city. You can go look it up. Look it up. It's a United Nations goal. Smart cities. It is the matrix that is being meant to enslave us, to control us. They have to tear down the old to bring in the new. Hey, if it takes nuclear war, hey, whatever, because they don't really care about human beings very much. How do we know that? Well, the United States just said there's a genocide underway in the Sudan. This is just a symptom of they don't care about people. The United States this past Tuesday accused a Sudanese paramilitary group and its proxies of committing genocide, singling them out in a conflict of unchecked brutality and drawing fresh attention to the scale of atrocities being perpetrated in Africa's largest war. But they left out something. We're funding it because the weapons that this group is using comes through the United Arab Emirates, the UAE, which is exactly the forum for Klaus Schwab's presentation that we just played a couple minutes ago, which is one of our primary allies in the Middle East. It's the home of many of our intelligence and military activities. All the weapons of the UAE come from the United States, and they're just taking them through the back door to fund this group, and through the front door, the other group that they're fighting with, we fund them directly. So, I mean, the line is just so intense. Play number 2, please.
Imagine living through coup attempts every decade for the past 60 years. That's exactly what's happened in Sudan, the northeastern African state with more than 40 million people. In October 2021, thousands of people flooded the streets after the military seized power in another coup. So what's gone wrong? The most important thing to understand is that Sudan's economic hardships and political instability didn't happen on their own.
It didn't happen out of a vacuum. You have the Sudan, it's plagued by a number of civil wars throughout the time, from its time of its independence. You will have a lack of unity. You have different superpowers that are getting involved.
Yes, foreign intervention. First, it was the British Empire. The British colonized Sudan at the turn of the 20th century, sharing colonial control with Egypt, which was subordinate to Britain. British colonialists invested heavily in the north, while Egypt ruled over the south. Britain put northern leaders in positions of authority, modernized schools, and encouraged Islam, while in the south, British rulers scattered power among hundreds of tribal leaders, and Christian missionaries ran the education system. This colonial tactic of divide and rule created socio-economic tensions that played a role in Sudan's future conflicts.
And then it culminated with these various civil wars that occurred throughout the history of Sudan.
Sudan gained independence from British colonial rule in 1956, but its troubles didn't end there. As part of the Horn of Africa, Sudan was extremely important in geopolitics. Injections of weapons from world superpowers, including the United States, aggravated existing class, ethnic, and religious tensions. In fact, Sudan has often been dubbed as, quote, Africa's arms dump. During the Cold War, Sudan was one of many countries ravaged by the US and Soviet Union waging war via local proxies. The US alone sold Sudanese governments nearly $1 billion in arms during that time, and today, Sudan is one of Russia's biggest customers on the African continent. So, Sudan inherited colonial engineered ethnic tension and was armed by countries eyeing Sudan's geopolitical importance, and that's why it's not a coincidence that armed conflicts have consistently flared up in Sudan. Since gaining independence, Sudan went through 2 civil wars, just 11 years apart, the second of which left around 2 million people dead and more than 4 million displaced. Government-backed militia groups massacred countless Darfuri civilians in 2003 after anti-government armed groups began fighting the state. All this political instability meant the economy was going to struggle. which in turn only worsened the political instability. A bad foundation set by exploitative colonial practices and frequent armed conflicts was already hampering Sudan's economic development. US sanctions and the independence of South Sudan added more challenges in managing the economy. In 1997, the US placed debilitating sanctions on Sudan after labeling it as a state sponsor of terrorism, based on false claims that a pharmaceutical factory was producing chemical weapons for Al-Qaeda. The US bombed the factory in Khartoum, Sudan's capital. The 20-year sanctions cut Sudan off from most international trade. Essential items like healthcare equipment and airplane parts became inaccessible. In 2011, after the long haul of the Second Civil War, South Sudan gained independence. The secession of South Sudan meant that Sudan lost an estimated 75% of its oil reserves and a huge chunk of its income. It's therefore no surprise that 36% of Sudan's population were thought to be living in poverty in 2014. The US did eventually lift sanctions in 2017, but in the shadow of the sanctions' long-lasting effects, life for many Sudanese people didn't improve. In 2019, the Sudanese military took control after protests swept across the country due to rising food and fuel prices. Omar al-Bashir, a military-backed ruler who stayed in power for 30 years, was overthrown. But pro-democracy groups couldn't force the military out of power. Civilian leaders and military heads were supposed to co-govern the country until 2023 to run a democratic election and transition to a completely civilian-led government. But the deteriorating economy and COVID pandemic made things even harder. Protests broke out calling for military reform and full civilian rule. But like more than a dozen times before, the military took over and dissolved the transitional government. With foreign intervention, historical ethnic tension, heavily armed conflict, and economic struggle, the 2021 coup has thrown Sudan into another wave of uncertainty, but also into another wave of resistance.
The people should have the power. The people have taken to the streets. The people are voicing their displeasure. For the most part, the people themselves are truly interested in removing the military from power and having democratic elections and having a civilian government. So yes, the people themselves actually need to run the government, be in charge of their own fate, because for so long they have not been able to. They've been denied this.
Thank you, Tanner. Thank you. So I have a question for you. Do you know where the Sudan is? And do you care about the Sudanese people? Do we care about them? Well, somebody in our government does. I mean, I'm asking a rhetorical question. And in your mind, do you care about these people? Because you're killing them. You and me, we're killing them. Our government is arming both sides of this conflict. It's a massive famine. Who are the people that we have elected that allow we, the people, to participate in the world in this fashion? But it gets better. I know we're going over a lot of very disparate issues today, but they're all the same thing, just a little different. The United States has completed a $9 billion. We know this goes back to Milton Friedman and the inflation. What are we paying for? What are we doing? We're running a worldwide empire here, and we feel good about ourselves. We're becoming poor and enslaved. Empire and self-governance cannot coexist. Empire and self-governance cannot coexist. It just can't work. The U.S. completed a $9 billion plan. I mean, it's just a word, right? $9 billion. $9 billion is such a giant number. The damage in LA is up to $200 billion. I mean, these numbers are staggering. A $9 billion plan to upgrade its B-61 nuclear air-dropped gravity bombs to its latest variant known as the B-61-12. Please play number 3.
On Friday, the U.S. military announced its intention to field a powerful new nuclear munition. Pending authorization and appropriation by Congress, the Pentagon will begin working on the development of the B-61-13, a new variant of the B-61 gravity bomb. B-61-13, a new nuke in development. Designed for delivery by aircraft, the B-61-13 will have a yield range of 360 kilotons. For context, the atomic bombs the U.S. used against Japan in World War II, Little Boy and Fat Man, had yields of 13 and 23 kilotons respectively. Today's announcement is reflective of a changing security environment and growing threats from potential adversaries, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Space Policy John Plum said in a press release. The United States has a responsibility to continue to assess and field the capabilities we need to credibly deter and, if necessary, respond to strategic attacks, and assure our allies, Plum added. The Department of Energy's National Nuclear Security Administration will be responsible for developing the B-61-13. U.S. officials say the development of the B-61-13 isn't in response to a specific current event. The B-61-13 represents a reasonable step to manage the challenges of a highly dynamic security environment, Plum said. While it provides us with additional flexibility, production of the B-61-13 will not increase the overall number of weapons in our nuclear stockpile. The new nuclear bomb will have 7 times the yield of the B-61-12 bomb that the Air Force has been updating. B-61-12 tactical nukes. The life extension program of the B-61-12 tactical nuclear munition is a significant development in its own right. The new variant will bring an old munition into the modern era. Specifically, the -12 variant replaces the B-61-3, B-61-4, and B-61-7 variants of the tactical nuclear weapon. It improves safety and reliability. The Air Force now fields the -11 and -12 versions, thus streamlining maintenance. What makes the B-61 particularly versatile is the ability to adjust the bomb's yield according to the operational situation. The tactical nuke can be dialed to 4 different yields: 0.3, 1.5, 10, and 50 kilotons. The first B-61-12S rolled out of the production line in 2021. The life extension program is set to be over by 2026, and the Air Force expects it to cost $10 billion. The B-61-12 munitions will remain operational until the mid-2050s. Last year, the U.S. military relocated approximately 180 B-61-12 tactical nuclear bombs in Europe and Turkey in response to Russian threats about nuclear strikes in and around Ukraine. The new B-61-13 nuclear munition will use the production capabilities of the B-61-12 and include its modern safety, security, and accuracy features.
Thank you, Tanner. Well, these folks that are profiting from this, making me poor, making me into a slave, they hide behind the screen. They run the politicians out there in front. And we're waking up. We, the people, are waking up. It's going to be a question of how many people wake up and how soon. And I'm not overwhelmingly optimistic about this because it takes a lot of work and a lot of research to wake up and a lot of courage to wake up. And here we go, program after program, and then we have thread after thread. Please play number 4.
Canadian right-wing opposition leader Pierre Poilievre and soon-to-be next Prime Minister was asked a hostile question by a reporter about Iranian nukes and whether he would support Israel's efforts to take them out. Watch his epic response.
Yesterday you said that you endorse Israel proactively defending itself by hitting Iran's nuclear sites, which is something that President Joe Biden does not endorse. Do you not feel like this could lead to a likelihood of an all-out conventional war between Iran and Israel? And do you not agree with Joe Biden and his assessment?
I think the idea of allowing a genocidal, theocratic, unstable dictatorship that is desperate to avoid being overthrown by its own people to develop nuclear weapons is about the most dangerous and irresponsible thing that the world could ever allow. And if Israel were to stop that genocidal, theocratic, unstable government from acquiring nuclear weapons, it would be a gift by the Jewish state to humanity.
Wow. Very strong words there from
Wow, that's good.
Canadian
Thank you. We
opposition.
don't have to go any farther with that. That is the likely new Prime Minister of Canada. I just have to shake my head. These are our leaders. This is what they're up to. Nuclear war. Boy, that'd be a great way to create a whole new world, wouldn't it? Burn it all down. Maybe these burns are just kind of, experiments. Because, when you drop a nuclear bomb on something, you burn out a large section of a city. You can then rebuild a smart city for the survivors.
Yeah.
It's kind of a test, so to speak. A test. I mean, that's just one possible reality. I'm appealing to this audience to become politically active. The lives of your children depend on it. And the quality of your life depends on it. And I have to ask you, please, the next time you need tires, go to tireget.com. We're going to put a little icon soon on the screen so I won't have to be talking about it.
It'll be on this episode.
It's going to be on this episode?
So you guys have been looking at it the whole
Oh,
time.
great. See? We've got new energy here. We want to expand what we're doing here. I am fighting this. I view this as being incorrect. The wrong way to live. Human arrogance. How arrogant it is to create technology that can destroy lives on this scale. How arrogant it is to pursue a governance that exposes the citizenry to known natural threats and disasters that can be mitigated. And I have to ask myself, why wouldn't you do that? I mean, Gavin Newsom, the future Democrat president contender in 2028, the man's got the inside track, and he's going to turn this into a positive. They're going to blame this on global climate change, and they're going to double it down, and they will win that argument. They're going to win a BS story. They're going to win a BS story. And why not? Look what our government is doing. I mean, we're spending money on weapons. Reagan said something. The government is spending. He said, well, you could say the government is spending money like drunken sailors, but that would be unfair to drunken sailors. So, I mean, it's just crazy. So, and then we're moving into a war footing and using this idea of war across the whole range of governmental and political and economic decisions. There's a Japanese steel maker, Nippon Steel of Japan, was going to buy U.S. Steel, which is definitely an iconic U.S. company. And it's been blocked by Joe Biden, which is, strange at one level that he would block that because Japan's our ally. But he is now interested in protecting domestic industries, which are involved in the production of materials for war making. And that means a new bipartisan nationalist economic policy is emerging. I'll read from the United Steelworkers press release about this issue. The United Steelworkers welcomes President Biden's decision to block the U.S. Steel Nippon deal. We have no doubt that it's the right move for our members and our national security. Throughout the past year, as this transaction was under review, our union's first and only concern has been the long-term viability of our facilities as we look to ensure a strong domestic steel industry well into the future. Nippon Steel has proved itself to be a serial trade cheater that for decades worked to undermine our domestic industry by dumping its products into our market. This is a Japanese company, one of our greatest allies. Allowing it to purchase U.S. steel would have offered it the opportunity to further destabilize our system of trade from within, and in the process, compromise our ability to meet our own national security and critical infrastructure needs. In other words, this is a national security issue. So, as we move into the President Trump administration, will he declare a national security emergency and start to use that emergency to change the nature of the globalized trade architecture? Uh, Likely. Will there be casualties? Yes. People will go bankrupt because of this. I could go bankrupt because of it. They don't care about what was. It's the world that we're moving into. And we, the people, can demand peace. And if we don't, it's war we shall have. Oh, you found the LA firefighters thing. That's great. We played that, right?
Yeah,
It's
we played
way
that.
back in the script here. What was I thinking of? Well, I was thinking about talking about the 10,000 buildings that have burnt so far, but we've covered it, and we're going to move into the pith of tonight's presentation. What are the communists really up to? Who are these people? And we think of communism as an economic strategy. It's a strategy of governance. It is the reversal of self-governance. If you look at it over time, we had the thousands and thousands of years of monarchical rule, where you had hereditary kings and queens who ruled in association with a theocratic class. This goes all the way back to Egypt and the pharaohs, right? I mean, this has been the typical formation of governance. A small group of people use tyrannical power to enslave the everyman, like me and you. We're just regular people. And we uh, had a brief explosion of freedom, which was called the philosophy of republicanism, which allowed each of us to be the sovereigns of our own life. Well, that's interesting. Freedom. Freedom has now been reversed and is in the process of being reversed by what's called the post-World War II Democrat liberal order, liberal and communist really being the same thing. And what do the communists believe? What are the communists really up to? Well, we claim we're taught. I'm not claiming it. I was taught it's an economic argument. No, I don't think so. That's a cover story. That's a symptom of what they're really up to. What they're really up to is eliminating faith in Christ. Because when I walk by faith and not by sight, what my rulers seek to impose upon me is really of no concern to me. I'm giving myself over to a plan I don't even try to understand. I'm not interested in what man has in store for me. I'm living my life dedicated to what God has in store for me. And boy, that makes me kind of a dangerous person, right? I mean, when people cross that threshold and they no longer are concerned about uh, temporal consequences when they enter the world, as we talked about in the last podcast, of timelessness, they're no longer focused on the illusion of time, the trap of time. They're living in that unseen world more and more, progressively more and more of us could do that. Oh, that is a threat. And what the communist does, the communist seeks to reverse that republicanism by focusing everyone in the material world. The communist is anti-God. Marx, the foundation of irreligious criticism is man makes religion. Religion does not make man. Well, religion and faith are two different things for a start. If we extricate ourselves from the religious systems, or as Bruce Lee said, don't tell me who your teacher was. Let me see if you can fight. It really doesn't matter who trained you. If it's Shotokan or Taekwondo or Tang Soo Do or Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. That's just a system to learn the ropes of the game, to learn the game. But when it comes down to an actual fight, that's not really the program. The program is vertical or horizontal. That's the program. You're either standing at the end or you're laid out. It's a little bit like that in religion. We have these religious systems that teach us about the search for truth, the unknown world. We try to move into that world through ritual, through study, through the transmission of information from time immemorial, through culture. But when we actually have learned it and we're in that world, it's not really about religion. It's about your alignment with that unseen world. As Christ said, he didn't come to overthrow the law, he came to fulfill it. That's the point of the law. So if you're young and you're making decisions about what you're going to do in your life, pause. It's not a tiger that you're dealing with. You don't have to make a quick decision. Measured decisions based on the search for truth is what we seek as a culture. What we seek as individuals, lest we fall into sin and separation from that unseen world. But even when we fall into sin, it's a path back into that unseen world, because when we sin, we study, we devote ourselves to charity and good works, we repent. We repent of our sin, we study, and we do good works. And that will bring us back into the search for truth. And as I've said before, in traditional culture, those that return are at a higher level than those that have never sinned. Because if you've never sinned, you really don't know it. I mean, you could be very pure and very good, but when you really make the error and you come back, oh, I've tasted that. That's no good for me. And you fight your way back into truth. Woo, that's a powerful person right there. The communists want to make that impossible. The communist wants to focus everything in the material world. That's why the communist is so focused on price and economy and money. And the idea that man makes religion. In other words, God is made in the image of man, not that man is made in the image of God. They reverse it. Anytime you find a reversal of the traditional, you're looking at Satanism, because that's what the Satanist does. The Satanist seeks to destroy Christ on this planet, to remove Christ from this planet, the energy of Jesus Christ, the thought, the search for, and you reverse it. So we are taught in traditional culture that man is made in the image of God. Marx teaches that God is made in the image of man. Hey, Satanist, that's what that is. Lenin carried along with that. Religion is the opium of the people. This saying of Marx is the cornerstone of the entire ideology of Marxism about religion. All modern religions and churches, all and every kind of religious organization, are always considered by the Marxists as organs of bourgeois reaction used for the protection of the exploitation and the stupefaction of the working class. These people are very mean, okay? They're very mean. The monarchs of old who ruled over us in association with the church kept us poor and slaves. But we had God. We had the hope of a better life. At least we had the faith. These people want to keep us poor and under control and eliminate our faith. These people are villains, real villains. And it falls through right in, it just comes right through the cracks. The focus on price and money comes even from the alleged Republicans. Play number 6, please.
We watched an $18 billion surplus be spent. Not only was that spent on the backs of Minnesotans, another $10 billion of taxes and fees were added to support purely partisan priorities. And I'm happy to tell you today that those days are over. In the House of Representatives, House Republicans stand with 67 members in our caucus. As you have watched the news, we know that Democrats no longer have 67. There is no longer a tie in the state of Minnesota.
That's good. That's good.
Democrats-
This is Lisa DeMuth. She's the Republican House Speaker in Minnesota. And I'm picking on her because she's just a Marxist. She's just a Marxist. She's not talking about freedom or self-governance or setting the people free of government. She's just saying the Democrats are spending money. Well, how did they spend it? They spent it with Republicans together. The distinction that needs to be drawn between republicanism and the post-World War II Democrat liberal order has yet to be drawn. That's why I'm thinking about politics, because we don't have people that understand this in politics because, hey, it's show business. What do they say? Politics is show business for ugly people? Hey, it's show business. You don't have to work very hard. You just got to show up and act like President Trump. Why are we talking about money? Why are we talking about money when the people are dependent on gas and electricity when it's 4 below zero? And if that gets shut off, we all freeze to death. Why aren't we talking about restoring wood stoves in everybody's houses? Oh, it's bad for the environment. We can't be burning wood. You know what? This whole thing is about enslaving the people on a scam. And I'm going to get a t-shirt up on freepeoplestore.com. Tanner, remind me, I'd rather die by tornado than die by tyrant. I would rather die of a tornado than a tyrant. I just would. I would rather die by natural events than by being ruled over by people who use the natural way as don't use the Lord's name in vain, right? I was going to talk about a friend of mine. I just got sidetracked because I'm free flowing today, and she said, and I said, you know, I hang around with people that don't believe in God. And you go, well, why would I do that? And I went off on my own walk. But she said to me, and I know this person doesn't believe in God, and she said to me, this is God's punishment for the people in California. This fight. I looked at her, I said, you don't believe in God. She goes, in this regard, I think it's God's punishment. And I walked away and I thought to myself, that is a violation of the 10 Commandments. That's using the Lord's name in vain. We don't do that. We don't not believe in God and say, oh, we don't believe in God and say what punishment is. I had a minister that I liked when I was young, and he used to say, if you have nothing good to say about a person, find something, like they sure have pretty blue eyes. You know, if we could get back to that, quit judging on each other and focus on our own problems. Or as Christ said, why are you picking out the cinder in your neighbor's eye when you got a log in your own eye? That's where I'm at. Why are we talking about House Republicans at the federal level or at the state level as Republicans about money when what republicanism is about is freedom? It's not about money. Well, let's play a little bit of number 7, just a little bit.
Mr. Chairman, Attorney General Garland, let me just ask you, does your department have a problem with anti-Catholic bias?
Our department protects all religions and all ideologies. It does not have any bias against any religion of any kind.
Well, you could have surprised me, because given the resources that you are expending and the apparently intelligence assets that you are deploying against Catholics, it appears, and other people of faith, while simultaneously turning a blind eye while people are executed gang style in the streets of our cities, including in my home state, your answer frankly surprises me. Let's talk about the Mark Houck case, for example. You've been asked about this already today, and frankly, your answers really astound me. This is a case where a Catholic pro-life demonstrator, father, was accused of disorderly conduct in front of an abortion center. The local prosecutor, the Philadelphia district attorney, who is a Democrat, a liberal, very progressive, declined to prosecute. There was a private suit that got dismissed. And then after all of that, your Justice Department sent between 20 and 30 armed agents in the early morning hours to the Houck's private residence to arrest this guy after he had offered to turn himself in voluntarily. Here's the photo. Once again, you can see the long guns, you can see the ballistic shields, you can see that they're wearing bulletproof vests. Why did the Justice Department do this? Why did you send 20 to 30 SWAT-style agents and a SWAT-style team to this guy's house when everybody else had declined to prosecute and he'd offered to turn himself in?
Determinations of how to make arrests under arrest warrants are made based by the tactical operators in the district. They are not.
But you surely looked into it by this point, right? You know the answer, surely.
All I know is what the FBI has said, which is that they made decisions on the ground as to what was safest and easiest.
So
they do not agree with your description of what happened on the scene.
You don't agree with my description. I'm pointing out what the photo is. There are agents here who have long guns and ballistic shields. Let's take a look at the hardened criminals that your Justice Department sent these armed agents to go terrorize on that morning. Here they are. Here they are at Mass. Here's the 7 children with Mr. Houck and his wife. In this early morning, they were all at home. Mrs. Houck has said repeatedly the children were screaming. They feared for their lives. You got these agents demanding that he come out. They've got the guns, she said, pointing at the house and at them. He has offered to turn himself in. And this is who you go to terrorize. What's really interesting to me is this seems to directly contradict your own memorandum about the use of force at the Justice Department. You say officers may use only the force that is objectively reasonable to effectively control an incident. Are you telling me that in your opinion as Attorney General, it was objectively necessary to use 20 or 30 SWAT-style agents with long guns and ballistic shields for these people?
What I'm saying is that decisions about how to go about this were made on the ground by FBI agents.
So you're saying you don't know?
I'm saying what I just said.
Which is that you're abdicating responsibility?
I'm not abdicating
Then
responsibility.
give me the answer. Do you think, in your opinion, you are the Attorney General of the United States? You are in charge of the Justice Department. And yes, sir, you are responsible. So give me an answer.
The FBI does not agree with your description.
I'm not asking about the FBI. You are the Attorney General. Give me your answer. Do you think that it was objectively reasonable and they followed your guidelines in sending 20 to 30 armed agents to terrorize these people? Yes or no?
The facts I have, which are those presented by the FBI, are not consistent with your description.
That's good.
So you think it was
I think the audience has the flavor of this. I'm making the case that our government is Marxist, that the New World Order is Marxist, that the post-World War II Democrat liberal order, which stands on the scientific method, democracy, and worldwide governance is Marxist. That Klaus Schwab is a Marxist. And what they're seeking to do is eliminate faith because republicanism stands on the 5,700-year tradition where people worship the one true God and from that relationship know what to do. We don't need man to tell us what to do. If we have faith, we know what to do and we know when we break the rules and we pay the price when we break the rules. And we learn from that. And these people are everywhere. Please play number 8.
We need to eat less meat. We need to stop land being used for cattle and growing grain for the billions of animals that we keep in our intensive farms. And then finally, we cannot hide away from human population growth because it underlies so many of the other problems. All these things we talk about wouldn't be a problem if there was the size of population that there was 500 years ago.
Okay, 500 years ago, that's 500 million people. That's exactly the number that was on the Georgia Guidestones, that the population of the earth should be 500 million people. Those Guidestones were destroyed in a unsolved incident. That's Jane Goodell She's been famous my entire life. She was a scientific researcher. She went into the wild in Africa and she communed with the uh, primates that were in the wild there. And people love Jane Goodall. She's a radical depopulationist, a radical depopulationist, a radical. But let's see how she is received by we the people. Please play number 9.
Jane Goodall.
There's Hillary Clinton in the front row.
The Presidential Medal of Freedom is awarded to Jane Goodall. From war-torn England to the jungles of Tanzania, Dr. Jane Goodall's childhood passion for animals led her to explore wildlife in Africa. Her groundbreaking discoveries of chimpanzees challenged scientific convention, reshaped conversation methods, and redefined our understanding of the connection between humans, animals, and the environment we share. Jane's activism, vision, and message of hope have mobilized a global movement to protect the planet. Above all, she has taught us that when we search for humanity in the natural world around us, we discover it within ourselves.
What she discovered in herself, thank you, Tanner, is a desire to depopulate the earth. She's a radical depopulationist. Radical. You heard it from her own mouth. We're giving her the presidential award. That's who we are. That's what we're doing. And I'll tell you how we do it. Please play number 11.
We got to keep Las Meninas and a few other Velasquez, but we only got a hold of 2 Goyas. That thing in Madrid was a real blow to art.
Not to mention people. How's Martha?
She's doing her animal charity thing. Sense of love.
This is kind of the wealth inequality, the ruling class.
Why did you come, Theo?
Well, the thing is, I met this girl.
Cute?
Beautiful.
Is it serious?
Very. She's got this brother in Brighton, and she hasn't seen him for about 5 years, and he's not doing too good. I mean, pretty sick. I don't think he's going to make it.
Sorry.
I've got money. I was just hoping that you might... I was hoping you could get us the transit papers to get to the coast.
Transit papers? It's quite a favor. I know. Highly controlled. Alex, take your pills. Alex. Alex? Alex! Come with me.
I'm really sorry, Nigel. I just don't know who else to ask.
See what I can do. What?
You kill me. 100 years from now, there won't be one sad fuck to look at any of this. What keeps you going?
You know what it is, Theo? I just don't think about it.
Thank you, Tanner. I just don't think about it. That's who we are. Rich or poor, we just don't think about it. Moloch is a word which appears in the Bible several times, primarily in the book of Leviticus. The Bible strongly condemns practices that are associated with Moloch, which are heavily implied to include child sacrifice. Depopulation. Burning our cities to the ground. And you shall not let any of your descendants pass through the fire to Moloch, nor shall you profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. There shall not be found among you anyone who makes his son or daughter pass through the fire, or one who practices witchcraft, or a soothsayer, or one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or one who conjures spells, or a medium, or a spiritist, or one who calls up the dead. For all who do these things are an abomination to the Lord, and because of these abominations, the Lord your God drives them out from before you. Again, you shall say to the children of Israel, whoever of the children of Israel, or of the strangers who dwell in Israel, who gives any of his descendants to Moloch, he surely shall be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. I will set my face against that man and will cut him off from his people, because he has given some of his descendants to Moloch, to defile my sanctuary and profane my holy name. And if the people of the land should in any way hide their eyes from the man, when he gives some of his descendants to Moloch, and they do not kill him, then I will set my face against that man and against his family, and I will cut off from his people. I will cut him off from his people, and all who prostitute themselves with him to commit harlotry with Moloch. Okay, that's where we're at. That's where we're at. That's where we're at. We've kind of lost touch with the search for truth, and we've allowed our governance to be either ill-intended or incompetent. It's all around us. Now, I'll say something again. It's not going to be solved unless we get involved. If we don't get involved, this is going to continue. We are going to become slaves. I can't think of a worse outcome. Death is preferable to slavery. Yet, we're walking into our technological prisons with joy about it because, hey, we're high, porn's free, and we seemingly have all we need today. Well, I want to live in nature with a wood-burning hearth, growing my own food. I want to give up all the arrogance that I have about being a modern person. It's not working. Now you say, oh, this can't be reversed. It's irreversible. No, culture is malleable. We create the culture. We, the people, create the culture. The question is, how far are we willing to go to give up the convenience and the alleged safety of modern life to get off this economy of war and death, which is the Republic of the United States of America? Our republic has been occupied by ill-intended or incompetent people working together to enslave me. I'm asking each of you to do your own research, come to your own conclusions, and if you agree with me, take the next step and go into action by becoming involved politically. This is David Penn, your host of the Professor Penn podcast, thanking you for being here. I'm intending to be back on Thursday night. I'm going to go out with a beautiful piece of music because I always like to uplift myself when the subject is so awful. Thank you for watching. Have a great night.
Have a good night, everybody.
you.